Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to a time and a place where hope wore a very, very dark uniform. And the promise of a glorious future was built on a foundation of chilling ideology. Imagine you're standing on a cobblestone street in a German city, say Munich, in the mid-1930s. The air is electric with a strange new energy, a mix of promise and menace. Your future, your very worth, could be decided by the color of your eyes or the shape of your nose. The chilling thought. Isn't it? It's in this world that our story unfolds. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan to that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air itself feels different here, in 1935. It feels crisp, purified. The humiliation of the Great War and the desperate, decadent chaos of the Weimar years feel like a fever dream that has finally broken. On every corner, it seems, bright red banners hang starkly against the grey stone of the old buildings, the black symbol at their center a promise of order and strength. You pull your simple wool coat a little tighter. It's not just the flags. The rhythmic tramp of marching boots on pavement has become a kind of city heartbeat, a constant reminder of renewed purpose. The laughter you hear in the beer halls feels louder, more defiant. The faces of the people you pass on the street, at least, the ones who are supposed to belong, seem to have shed a decade of worry. You're a part of this. You feel it in your bones. You are 22 years old, and for the first time in your life, the future feels like a solid thing, something you can build. You remember the hunger of your childhood, the shame in your father's eyes when he lost his job. Now, there is bread. There is a new word everyone uses with an almost religious reverence: Volksgemeinschaft, the people's community. It's a beautiful idea. You think, a nation reborn as one big family. You think, where class and wealth no longer divide people. Everyone is a German, united in blood and soil. You see it in the propaganda posters pasted on the walls: heroic factory workers, stoic farmers, and strong, healthy families gazing toward a golden dawn. You participate, of course. Just last month was an into PS on Tagger One Pot Sunday. It's a wonderfully simple, and some might say clever, little piece of social engineering. On the first Sunday of the month, every family in Germany is encouraged to eat only a simple one pot to and donate the money they save on fancier food to the Winter Relief charity. You and your family did. You ate a hearty potato and cabbage stew, and your mother carefully put aside a few marks, a proud, dutiful look on her face. It makes you feel connected, a small cog in a vast, benevolent machine. A tiny sacrifice for the greater good. It's these small, shared rituals that bind you all together, erasing the lines between you and your neighbors. As a young woman, the new world has a special promise for you. The decadent, boyish flapper of the last decade is gone, dismissed as a symptom of a sick society. Now, the ideal is different. You catch your reflection in a bakery window. Your hair is fair, braided and pinned up. Your eyes are blue. Your eyes are blue. Your cheeks are healthy and rosy from the cold air. A few years ago, these were just facts of your appearance. Now, they feel like assets. They are your contribution to the Volksgemeinschaft. You read the women's magazines, no longer filled with jazz and short skirts, but with articles on housekeeping, child rearing, and genetics. Yes, genetics. The articles speak of a sacred duty, the duty to pass on your good German blood, to give the fatherland strong and healthy children. And this is where historians still endlessly debate the state of mind of millions of women just like you. Were you a true believer, utterly captivated by the siren song of national pride and belonging, or were you simply a product of your time, a young woman wanting a husband, a home, and security, and this was the only path available perhaps? Like for so many, the truth is a murky, uncomfortable space in between. You don't question the new order. Why would you? It has given your family stability and your country its pride back. And it has given you a purpose, a noble biological destiny. You are to be a mother of the new Germany. But as you walk home, The smell of coal smoke and roasting chestnuts in the air. A poster catches your eye. It's a new one. It shows a woman who looks a lot like you, blonde, strong with a serene smile. She holds a perfect, cherubic baby in her arms, but behind her, almost like a shadow, stands the figure of a man in a black uniform. The runes on his collar are stark in silver. The text below doesn't just praise motherhood in general. It speaks of a higher calling, of a racial duty to the Reich. The message is more pointed, more specific. It's no longer just a vague social ideal. It feels like a directive. And for a fleeting moment, the tiny, cold flicker of an ease touches you. The feeling that you are not just being celebrated, but being assessed. That your body, your future, is no longer entirely your own. It is becoming a matter of state. That fleeting sense of unease lingers, a cold little stone in the pit of your stomach. The poster, with its serene mother and its shadowy guardian, is just a piece of paper, but it represents a voice. A will, and you are starting to hear the name of the man behind that will more and more often. It's spoken in a different tone than the Führer's name, which is usually shouted with fervor. This name is spoken more quietly, with a mixture of respect and something that sounds a lot like fear. The name is Himmler, Heinrich Himmler. To look at him in newsreels or newspaper photographs, he is singularly unimpressive. You see a man with a narrow face, slicked back hair, and a chin that seems to recede into his collar. He peers at the world through a pair of pince-nez spectacles that sit perched on his nose, making him look more like a fussy schoolmaster or a provincial accountant than the second most powerful man in Germany. He doesn't have the raw, theatrical charisma of the Führer, or the bombastic, metal-laden presence of Hermann Göring. Himmler is quiet, precise, a man of files and ledgers and organization charts. And that, you're beginning to realize, is precisely what makes him so unnerving. He is the bureaucrat of the new order, the chief administrator of its soul. His official title is Reichsführer SS. You know what that means. He is the master of the SS, the Schutzstaffel. The men in the immaculate black uniforms. They started as the Führer's personal bodyguards, but now they are something else. They are the state security service, the enforcers of its new rules, the guardians of its ideology. And Himmler is their high priest. He is the one who has transformed them from simple guards into what he calls a racial elite, a new aristocracy of blood. You hear stories. You hear that to even apply to the SS, a man must prove his pure German ancestry all the way back to the year 1750th. His fiancée too must pass the same rigorous inspection. Marriage for an SS man is not a private affair. It requires a permit, a stamp of approval from Himmler's office. This is his grand project. He is not just building an organization, he is curating a bloodline. And this obsession with blood, with ancestry, with genetics, is his defining feature, cold passion. You overheard your father talking with a friend in hushed tones, mentioning a rumor that in his youth, Himmler was a chicken farmer. By how nose up to it sounds absurd, almost comical, but it also makes a terrifying kind of sense. He is applying the principles of animal husbandry to an entire nation. He sees the German people not as individuals, but as a genetic portfolio, a stock to be managed, improved, and purified. The strong are to be bred, the weak or unfit are to be well. The thought trails off. No one says that part out loud. This is the man whose shadow was behind the woman in the poster. His vision is not just for a powerful Germany, but for a racially clean one. He talks about it in his speeches, which you sometimes read excerpts of in the paper. He speaks of the sacred blood of the nation, and the solemn duty to preserve it. He warns against mixing with inferior races, his words clinical and chillingly detached. This is where historians to this day puzzle over the man's precise motivations. Was he a true mystic? A fervent believer in lost Aryan Superman and ancient Nordic runes, as some of his writings suggest, or was he the ultimate, cold-blooded opportunist, a man of terrifying ambition who realized that controlling a nation's biology, its births, its marriages, its very blood was the ultimate form of power? The answer, most likely, is a disturbing fusion of both. His influence is subtle but pervasive. It's in the new marriage loans given to genetically sound couples. It's in the lessons on racial hygiene that are starting to appear in school curriculums. It's in the sudden importance of your family's baptismal and birth certificates. Documents that were once just keepsakes in a drawer and are now vital proof of your worth. And this obsession, this grand agricultural project of human breeding, needs more than just rules and restrictions. A farmer doesn't just cull his flock, he must also create the perfect conditions for breeding his prize specimens. He needs a nursery, a special place to cultivate the next generation. And as you connect the dots, the posters calling for racially pure mothers, the SS marriage laws, the national obsession with ancestry, you begin to understand the chilling logic of what must come next. Himmler's vision requires a mechanism, a system. It needs an institution dedicated solely to the production of racially perfect children. It would have to be a place that is part hospital, part sanctuary, part factory. A place where women like you, women deemed to have the best blood, could fulfill their highest duty to the fatherland, with or without the formality of marriage. A place to create the foundation for his 1,000-year Reich, one perfect baby at a time. The man with the pince nez, the former chicken farmer, has a grand design. And you, with your blue eyes and your documented ancestry, are the raw material. The idea solidifies, moving from the realm of abstract ideology into concrete reality with chilling speed. It happens in December of 1935. The announcement is quiet, almost discreet, not trumpeted from the rooftops but established with the cold efficiency of a government directive. A new organization has been registered. It's called Lebensborn e.V., the Lebensborn Registered Association. The name itself is a piece of carefully poetry. Lebensborn, Fount of Life, so wholesome. It sounds like a natural spring, a source of vitality and renewal. Its public mission statement is a masterpiece of compassionate propaganda, a perfect example of what the Germans called unknown war camouflage. On the surface, Lebensborn is presented as a charitable, progressive welfare organization. Its stated purpose is to support racially and genetically valuable pregnant women, particularly those who are unmarried. The official line is that no woman carrying good German blood should feel compelled to seek an abortion out of shame or financial hardship. The program, it is said, is here to help. It will provide a safe, confidential, and comfortable place for these women to give birth. It will protect the mother and child from social stigma. It will ensure that every valuable German infant is brought into the world. And who could argue with that? On the surface, it looks like a compassionate, real social problem. Unwed mothers have always been ostracized. The church condemns them. Their families often disown them. Here, the state is stepping in, offering a helping hand. It is framed as a progressive act, a way of saving the unborn German life. You hear people talking about it. Some of your older neighbors, the more traditional ones, are a bit scandalized by the open acceptance of out-of-wedlock births. But many others, especially those swept up in the new national spirit, see it as a brave and necessary step. The Führer is looking after every German, from the womb to the grave, your uncle says with a proud nod over dinner. But you know instinctively that this is only the surface story. This is not just a chain of maternity homes. This is the practical arm of Himmler's obsession. The true purpose isn't charity, it's selective breeding. The goal is not just to prevent abortions, but to actively encourage and facilitate the creation of perfect Aryan children. The focus on unmarried women is key. A married woman's child belongs to her family, but a child born to an unmarried mother in a state-run home, that child, from its first breath, belongs to the state. It is a national asset, unencumbered by traditional family ties. The program is placed directly under the control of the SS Race and Settlement Main Office, the very same office that approves SS marriages and conducts the exhaustive ancestry checks. This is not a coincidence. It is the core of the entire operation. Lebensborn is to be the nursery for the new SS aristocracy. The homes are intended, first and foremost, for the wives and mistresses of SS men. But the invitation is quietly extended to any German woman who can meet the stringent racial criteria. She must be Aryan. She must be free of any hereditary diseases. Her family tree must be a flawless testament to her pure blood. And here's a bizarre, almost comical detail that reveals the strange pseudo-mysticism at the heart of the project. Himmler, obsessed with ancient Germanic lore, designed a special symbol for the Lebensborn organization. It's called the Lebens rune or life rune. It's a simple symbol of vertical line with two upward slanting branches, looking like a stylized tree or a person with arms outstretched to the sky. This ancient rune becomes the official emblem of the entire program. It is stamped on documents, hung on the walls of the homes, and even embroidered onto the layers of the newborn babies. It's a classic example of Himmler's worldview, a chilling fusion of modern, clinical eugenics and romanticized pagan symbolism. A strange, academic debate continues to this day about how much of this was genuine belief and how much was simply aesthetic branding for his monstrous project. The first Lebensborn home opens in a village just outside of Munich. It's in a secluded from a Jewish family. The location is deliberate away from prying eyes, offering the promised discretion. More homes soon follow, often in remote, idyllic settings, a castle here, a country estate there. They are always comfortable, well appointed, and staffed by the best medical professionals. The image projected is one of serene, privileged care. The message begins to filter down through official channels. Through the League of German Girls, the national women's organizations, and even through doctors and midwives. The Whisper Network is activated. If you are young, healthy, racially pure, and find yourself pregnant without a husband, or even if you are married to a soldier at the front and wish to have another child for the furrow, there is a place for you. A place of honor, a place of honor, a place where you can perform your sacred duty in comfort and secrecy. The invitation is there. It is not an order, not yet. It is presented as a choice, a patriotic opportunity. The door to the Fount of Life is creaking open, and it is waiting for women like you. The invitation, once just a whisper, now becomes a tangible possibility. It arrives not as a letter, but through a conversation. A local official from the NS Frauenschaft, the National Social Women's League, a woman with a kindly but firm expression, has a confidential chat with you. She has noticed you. She mentions your family's good standing, your healthy appearance, your clear-eyed, honest German look. Of the unique role a woman like you can play in the building of the new Reich. She uses the word special. And then she mentions Lebensborn. She makes it sound like an exclusive club, a sorority for the nation's best and brightest. The first step, she explains, is an application. It is, of course, entirely voluntary, but the implication is clear. To be considered is an honor, to be accepted a triumph. It is a deep dive into the very fabric of your biological being. It is a document that reduces you to a collection of genetic traits. You are handed a thick sheaf of papers. The title is chillingly bureaucratic, und UF offen May in Einheim des Lebensborn, application for admission to a home of the Lebensborn Association. You sit at your small wooden desk, the papers spread out before you. The first section is familiar enough: your name, date of birth, address. But it quickly moves into territory that feels deeply, invasively personal. You must detail your physical characteristics as if you were cataloging a prize animal. Hair color, you tick the box for blonde. Eye color, you tick blau. You are asked to describe your facial structure, your build. Is it slender, medium, robust? You pause, your pen hovering over the paper. How do you quantify your own body? You write healthy. Then comes the medical history. You must declare, under penalty of perjury, that you and your immediate family are free from a long list of hereditary defects. The list is extensive and terrifyingly vague: epilepsy, schizophrenia, feeble-mindedness, chronic alcoholism, physical deformities. A single unhealthy relative, even a distant cousin with a limp or a great-aunt who was considered eccentric, could be enough for disqualification. The next part is the most daunting. The NN pass, the ancestor passport. This is the cornerstone of the entire Nazi racial state, and for the Lebensborn program, it is the Holy Grail. You must prove your unsullied Dorian lineage, generation by generation. It's not enough to say your parents were German. You must provide the birth and baptismal certificates for your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and in some cases, even further back. You spend weeks writing to distant relatives, visiting church archives, and poring over dusty, forgotten ledgers in town halls. Each document is a small victory, another link in the unbroken chain that proves your worthiness. It is a genealogical obsession transformed into state policy. Your identity is no longer defined by your thoughts or your character, but by a stack of brittle, yellowing papers. And then there's the question of the child's father. If you are unmarried, his identity and his racial purity are just as crucial. He, too, must submit to the same invasive scrutiny. If he is an SS man, the process to streamline his value has already been certified. If he is a civilian, or a soldier in the regular army, he must provide his own and en pass. He, too, must be a flawless specimen. The entire endeavor is based on the cold, calculated union of two genetically valuable individuals. Love, affection, these are irrelevant variables in this equation. This is about biology. Once the paperwork is submitted, you wait. Then comes the physical examination. You stand in a sterile, white-tiled room, wearing nothing but a thin paper gown. A doctor, clinical and detached, measures you. He measures the width of your hips, a key indicator, in their view of childbearing suitability. He measures the circumference of your skull. He notes the shape of your nose and the set of your jaw. It is the most profoundly objectifying experience of your life. You are no longer a person. You are a set of data points, a collection of desirable traits, your breeding stock. Historians have debated the extent to which these racial examinations were based on actual science versus pseudo-scientific quackery. The truth is, it was a bizarre and sinister mix. While the focus on hereditary diseases had a veneer of legitimate medical concern, things like skull measurements and the classification of facial features were pure, unadulterated nonsense, derived from discredited 19th century racial theories. It was science twisted into the surdeology. A particularly strange and little-known element of this process was the racial photography. You would be seated and photographed from the front and in profile, like a criminal suspect. These photographs would be sent to the Race and Settlement main office for expert analysis. A bureaucrat in Berlin, someone you would never meet, would study your features and decide if they fit the Aryan ideal. It's a chilling thought, your fate, your future, resting in the hands of a man with a file, a photograph, and a set of calipers. Finally, weeks later, a thick envelope arrives. Your hands tremble as you open it. Inside is a letter, typed on heavy paper, embossed with the Lebensborn. You have been accepted. You are deemed worthy. A wave of relief, pride, and a deep, unspoken fear washes over you. You have passed the test. You are now officially a future mother for the Reich. The letter includes instructions, a train ticket, and the address of a home you've never heard of, in a part of the country you've never seen. Your new life is about to begin. The official letter sits on the table, its embossed runes seeming to watch you. You have been deemed worthy. But what does that truly mean? Is it an honor, as the Women's League officials so earnestly described it, or is it a command wrapped in the silken language of patriotic duty? This is the suffocating genius of the system you find yourself in. The lines are deliberately blurred. You tell your family. Your mother cries, a mixture of pride and a sadness she can't quite name. Pride because her daughter has been singled out by the state for a special purpose. In a society where conformity and contribution are the highest virtues, this is a mark of distinction. Sadness because you are leaving, and because the circumstances are so unusual. Your father is stoic, his face unreadable. He claps you on the shoulder and says, "You will do your duty." He says it like a confirmation, or perhaps a reassurance to himself. Your friends' reactions are a mirror of the society around you. Some are envious. They see the path you are on as one of privilege. You will be cared for in a beautiful home, away from the factories and the farms. You will be contributing to the future in the most fundamental way possible. They see the choice you have made as a heroic one. A few, the quieter ones, just look at you with a kind of pity in their eyes, as if you are a beautiful bird who has just volunteered to fly into a gilded cage. They don't say anything, of course. Voicing such doubts would be dangerous. The pressure is immense, a constant, low-frequency hum beneath the surface of every interaction. It comes from the posters on the walls, the songs on the radio, the speeches of the leaders. The message is relentless. The greatest thing a woman can do is produce children for the fatherland. Having many children is a patriotic act. The state even created a new award, the Cross of Honor of the German Mother, the Mutterkreuz. It's a medal given to women for prolific childbearing. A bronze cross for children, silver for 6, and gold for 8 or more. People half-jokingly call it the Order of the Rabbit. It's a small, telling piece of gallows humor in a state that has turned procreation into a nationalized industry. And for you, an unmarried woman, Lebensborn is presented as the only honorable way to participate in this great biological crusade. To refuse now that you have been accepted would be unthinkable. It would not be seen as a personal decision. It would be an act of defiance. A rejection of the state's generosity. A questioning of its judgment. Who are you to say no to the Reich? Who are you to deny the valuable blood that flows in your veins? Your file already exists in a cabinet in Berlin. Your measurements have been recorded. Your ancestors vetted. You are no longer just an individual, you are an asset, and assets are meant to be utilized. Here, historians still grapple with the question of coercion versus consent. For the women in your position, was there a genuine choice on paper? Yes. There were no armed guards forcing you onto the train. But the psychological and social pressure was a prison in itself. In a totalitarian state, the absence of a direct order does not mean the presence of freedom. The system is designed to make the correct choice the only logical, safe, and honorable one. Any other path is fraught with suspicion and potential ostracization. The choice is yours, but the options have been narrowed to one. There is also the promise of a better life, a powerful incentive in a country still recovering from economic hardship. The Lebensborn homes are depicted as sanctuaries of comfort and difficult living conditions of the average German family. For a young woman, perhaps from a poor background, the prospect of living in a beautiful villa with good food, medical attention, and no financial worries would have been incredibly seductive. It's a deal, your body in exchange for security, your room for the right. And then there's the most insidious pressure of all, the desire to belong, to be a part of something great and historic. You have been raised on stories of national destiny, of a people united in a grand mission. To be chosen for Lebensborn is to be moved from the audience to the stage. You are no longer just a spectator of history, you are an active participant, a vessel for the future. This deep-seated human need for purpose and community is weaponized, turned into a tool of biological engineering. You pack a small suitcase. Simple clothes, a book of poetry, a photograph of your family. As you fold your dresses, you feel a profound sense of detachment, as if you are preparing for someone else's journey. You look at yourself in the mirror. You see your own blue eyes, your own fair hair. But for the first time, you see them as a set of specifications. A uniform. You are about to report for duty. The honor feels heavy, like a medal you never asked for, but it rings louder than any shouted order. You are going because in the world that has been built around you, there is no other respectable choice to make. You arrive at a small sleepy train station. A car is waiting for you. Not a military vehicle, but a simple, dark civilian car. The driver is a man in a plain suit, polite but silent. He takes your suitcase, holds the door open for you, and you drive away from the village, turning onto a winding country road. The further you get from the town, the more secluded the landscape becomes. The road is lined with ancient oak and linden trees, their branches forming a canopy overhead. It feels like you are entering a private estate, a world apart. And then you see it. Through a break in the trees, you get your first glimpse of the home. It's a large, handsome villa, more like a country hotel or a sanatorium than what you'd imagined. It's set in the middle of a sprawling, manicured park, complete with a gravel driveway, flowered, and a shimmering pond. And the building itself is immaculate, with clean white walls, a traditional tiled roof, and large windows that gleam in the afternoon sun. There are no flags, no obvious signs of the state. There is only the small, discreetly placed Lebensborn Fee sign near the main gate with its simple, stylized life rune. The car crunches to a halt on the gravel. The driver opens your door and for a moment, you just sit there, taking it all in. The air is clean and smells of pine needles and damp earth. Birds are singing. It is aggressively, unavingwam idyllic. It looks like the cover of a magazine celebrating the healthy, simple life. A golden cage. The phrase floats into your mind embodied. You push it away. A woman in a crisp white nurse's uniform comes down the steps to greet you. She is smiling a professional, reassuring smile. "Welcome," she says in a soft, calm voice. "We have been expecting you. My name is Sister Hild. Please come inside." Her manner is gentle, but there's an efficiency to her movements, a sense of authority beneath the placid surface. She leads you through the heavy oak doors into the entrance hall. The interior is just as impressive as the outside. The floors are polished wood, partly covered by thick, expensive-looking rugs. A grand staircase sweeps up to the second floor. The furniture is solid, well-made, and comfortable. There are fresh flowers in a vase on a hallway table. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The only thing that seems out of place is the profound, almost unnatural silence. It's the quiet of a museum or a library, not a home. You can hear the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner, a sound that seems to measure out your new life in slow, deliberate beats. Sister Hild gives you a brief tour. "This is the common room," she says, gesturing to a large, sun-drenched lounge with comfortable armchairs and sofas. "And the library. We have a fine selection of approved literature." You glance through the glass-fronted bookcases. You see the works of Goethe and Schiller, but also thick volumes on racial theory and copies of the Fourier book. Meals are served in the dining hall. They are, of course, nutritionally balanced for you and the child. Everything is designed for optimal health, for the perfect development of the precious life you are carrying. She leads you upstairs to your room. It is not a dormitory, as you might have feared, but a private room. It is simple but spotlessly clean and comfortable. There is a single bed with a thick duvet, a small wardrobe, a desk, and a window that looks out over the park. It is peaceful, and it is completely impersonal. There is nothing on the walls, no trace of the women who must have been here before you, waiting for you to occupy it for a few months before it is wiped clean for the next occupant. A strange and often overlooked aspect of the Lebensborn homes was the deliberate creation of this high-end, almost luxurious environment. Himmler insisted on it. He wanted to create a sense of privilege and reward for the women who participated. It was a crucial part of the psychological manipulation. This was not a place of shame, it was a resort. You were not an outcast, you were a guest of honor. But this luxury came with a price. It created a sense of obligation. You were being given the best of everything. In return, you were expected to give your best to your child. Sister Hild leaves you to unpack. You place your few belongings in the wardrobe. You set the photograph of your family on the small bedside table. It looks small and out of place in the sterile room. You walk to the window and look down at the perfect manicured lawn. You see two other women, both visibly pregnant, walking slowly along a path by the pond. They are wearing simple, comfortable dresses. They don't seem to be talking. They just walk separated by a few feet of silence. They look like characters in a dream. The doors of the golden cage have closed behind you. It is quiet, it is beautiful, and you have never felt so completely and utterly alone. The unnerving quiet of your arrival soon gives way to the rigid structure of your new reality. Life in the Lebensborn home is governed by the bell. A bell wakes you in the morning. A bell calls you to meals. A bell signals the start of daily activities, and a bell announces lights out in the evening. Your life, which once had the messy, unpredictable rhythm of a real home, is now segmented into precise, manageable blocks of time. It is the life of a boarding school, or a convent, or a very comfortable prison. Your day begins early. After a simple but nutritious breakfast, porridge, whole grain bread, fresh milk, the work begins. For the women who are not in the late stages of pregnancy, this often means light duties around the home and grounds. You might be assigned to the sewing room, mending linens or embroidering the tiny Lebens rune onto baby clothes. Or perhaps you'll spend the morning in the garden, tending to the vegetables that will later appear on your plate. It is all framed as healthy, wholesome activity, good for body and mind. It is also a way of ensuring you are useful, that you are contributing to the upkeep of the system that is sustaining you. There are no idle hands in this idyllic prison. The afternoons are for education of a university or a finishing school. This is indoctrination delivered in a calm, clinical tone. You gather in the common room, seated in the comfortable armchairs while a visiting lecturer, often a woman from the Nazi Women's League or a doctor from the SS, instructs you. The topics are always the same. You have lessons in racial hygiene, where you learn again about the sacred duty of preserving German blood. You study child rearing, based on the latest party-approved methods that emphasize toughness and emotional distance to create strong, resilient children for the state. And then there are the ideology sessions. You sit for hours listening to lectures on the greatness of the Führer, the destiny of the Reich, and the evils of its enemies. You are expected to listen attentively, to nod in agreement. Sometimes, you are made to watch newsreels or propaganda films. The atmosphere in the room during these sessions is thick with unspoken tension. You look around at the other women. Their faces are placid, their expressions neutral. It is impossible to know what they are truly thinking. Are they absorbing it all with fervent belief, or have they, like you, learned to wear a mask of passive acceptance? One of the strangest and most debated aspects of life inside the homes is the extent of this political brainwashing. Some former Lebensborn mothers later claimed they paid little attention to the lectures, that it was all just background noise. Others seem to have internalized the ideology completely. The historical consensus is that the effect varied greatly, but the intent was clear. The homes were not just for birthing, they were for ideological reinforcement. The goal was to produce not only a racially pure child, but also a politically reliable mother. The food is plentiful and of high quality, a stark contrast to the rationing that is beginning to affect the rest of the country. Fresh fruit, vegetables, meat, milk, all the things deemed essential for a healthy pregnancy are provided in abundance. Your health is monitored with meticulous, almost obsessive care. There are daily check-ins with the nurses, regular weigh-ins, and frequent examinations by the resident doctor. Every aspect of your physical well-being is managed and recorded. You are a precious vessel, and your cargo is being protected at all costs. But this constant surveillance, this focus on the purely biological, creates a strange sense of disembodiment. The nurses and doctors speak about your body, your pregnancy, with a detached professionalism. They rarely ask how you are feeling emotionally. Your anxieties, your fears, your hopes, these are not relevant data points. They are messy, unpredictable variables in a carefully controlled experiment. Your mind and your spirit are secondary to the function of your womb. In the evenings after the final meal, there is free time. But even this is structured. You can read from the approved library, listen to state-controlled radio broadcasts, or play board games. Conversation with the other women is polite but guarded. You talk about trivial things, the weather, the food, the progress of your pregnancies. You almost never talk about your homes, your families, or the fathers of your children. The past and the future are forbidden territories. There is only the carefully managed present. The lack of genuine, heartfelt connection is the most suffocating aspect of all. You are surrounded by women in the exact same situation, yet an invisible wall of silence and suspicion separates each of you. Everyone is watching everyone else. A single misplaced word, a moment of doubt, could be reported. And no one knows what the consequences of that would be. As you lie in your bed at night, waiting for the final bell, you listen to the sounds of the house. The creak of a floorboard, a distant cough, the wind in the trees outside your window. You place a hand on your growing belly. This is the only real thing in this whole artificial world. This tiny, fluttering life inside you. You are here for this child. But as you drift off to sleep, a chilling thought takes root. When the child is born, who will it truly belong to, you, or the state that has so carefully orchestrated its creation? The one subject that is never ever discussed in the sun-drenched common room or over the nutritionally balanced meals is the most obvious one: the fathers. They are the great, silent, invisible presence in the home. Their genetic contribution is the entire reason you are here, yet their identities as individuals, as men, are shrouded in a fog of official secrecy and deliberate anonymity. They exist only as a concept, the racially pure, ideologically sound German male. For the married women in the home, the wives of SS officers or high-ranking officials, the situation is straightforward if sterile. Their husbands are known, but for you, and for the majority of the unmarried women, the father of your child is a more complicated figure. He might have been a brief, passionate fling, a soldier on leave, a young man you thought you loved. Or in the most clinical and chilling scenario, he may have been a complete stranger, a man selected for you by the SS. This is the darkest and most controversial part of the Lebensborn program, the part that veers from state-sponsored welfare into a full-blown human breeding program. While the official story was that Lebensborn was for women who were already pregnant, the reality was far more sinister. The program actively facilitated and encouraged unions between racially valuable women and selected SS men for the express procreation. This wasn't about love or marriage. It was about a stud farm. The process was as cold and calculated as everything else. An SS man, having already passed the rigorous racial screening for entry into the organization, could volunteer for this special duty. He would be granted a short leave and sent to a location near a Lebensborn home. A young woman, a member of the League of German Girls or another party organization who had also been racially vetted, would be invited to meet him. It was presented as a patriotic blind date. They would spend a few days together. The goal was impregnation. After that, the SS man would return to his duties, and the woman, if the union was successful, would be quietly admitted to a Lebensborn home a few months later. She would likely never see him again. He would have no legal or financial responsibility for the child. His name would not be on any public document. He was a donor, a biological contributor to the Reich's genetic stock. The child would belong to the state, and through the state, to the SS. You look at the other women in the home, the ones who arrived alone, and you wonder, which of them are here because of a moment of passion, and which are here as the result of a state-arranged biological transaction? You can't tell. There's a shared veil of secrecy that makes it impossible to know anyone's true story. Everyone is simply a mother for the Führer. Even for the women who knew the father, the connection was often severed. The intense secrecy of the Lebensborn homes was designed to break traditional family bonds. The men were discouraged from visiting. Letters were screened. The outside world was to be kept at a distance. The home was to become your entire world, and the ideology of the Reich your new family. A particularly telling and strange detail is the alimentation or maintenance system. The SS man who fathered a child, whether through a casual liaison or an arranged union, was required to pay child support. But he did not pay it to the mother. He paid it directly to the Lebensborn organization. It was an anonymous, bureaucratic transaction. This reinforced the idea that he was fulfilling a duty to the SS, not to a specific woman or child. Historians still debate the efficacy of this system. Records show that many SS men defaulted on these payments, leaving the financial burden entirely on the organization, and by extension, the state. It shows the gap between the ideological blueprint of a loyal, responsible SS father and the often messy reality of human behavior. You think about the father of your own child. Perhaps you remember a face, a name, a handful of stolen moments. Or perhaps he is just a vague memory, a ghost. In this place, it almost doesn't matter. Here, he has been erased. He has been replaced by the abstract concept of the good German father, a role model embodied by the distant, stern-faced foreign, the meticulous, ever-watchful Reichsführer Himmler. The system is designed to create a child beholden to no one, but its ideological creators. A child without a personal father, but with a grand, symbolic one, the state. A child who could be molded from birth without the interference of personal loyalties or family history. These are the children of the SS, fathered by anonymous soldiers of the New Order and born in the secret nurseries of the Reich. They are meant to be the first generation of a new type of human, a blank slate upon which the future of the 1,000-year Reich will be written. And you, in this quiet, sunlit room, are the instrument of their creation. The father is a ghost, the state is everything. The weeks turn into months. Your body changes, the new life inside you making its presence more and more known. The structured, passional routine of the home becomes your new normal. The bell, the meals, The lectures, they are the predictable currents in a slow-moving river, carrying you towards the inevitable conclusion of your journey. And as your pregnancy advances, the focus on you as a biological instrument intensifies. Your entire existence is now oriented around the successful production of a healthy infant. Your diet is not just balanced, it's prescriptive. The nurses don't just ask if you're eating well, they observe what you eat, ensuring you consume the required amounts of protein and vitamins. You are encouraged to spend time outdoors, walking in the pristine ground, not for your own pleasure, but because fresh air and gentle exercise are good for the child's development. Everything you do, every choice you make is filtered through the lens of its effect on your womb. You feel a profound and unsettling disconnect from your own body. It is no longer yours. It is a national resource, a piece of state property being carefully managed for a specific outcome. The doctors and nurses discuss your progress in hushed, clinical tones, often just outside your door or during examinations, sometimes as if you aren't even there. They talk about fetal development, pelvic capacity, and gestational progress. You are the container. Wishing you a pleasant experience. This sense of being a vessel, a service provider for the state, has a deep psychological impact. For some women, it might have been a relief, a way to abdicate responsibility and simply trust in the system. But for you, it breeds a quiet resentment, a feeling of being erased. You find yourself retreating inward, focusing on the small, secret sensations that are yours alone, the flutter of a kick, a bout of hiccups that only you can feel. These are the only parts of the experience that haven't been co-opted and catalogued by the system. The ideology of the home reinforces this dehumanization. The lectures you attend often touch upon the idea of sacrifice. You are told that your personal discomfort, your emotional turmoil, are small sacrifices for the greater good of the Volk. The ideal Lebensborn mother is serene, passive, and untroubled. She is a placid vessel, joyfully fulfilling her biological destiny. To show anxiety or fear is to be weak, to be ungrateful. So you learn to perform the role. You speak in calm tones, and you keep your deep-seated fears locked away. A fascinating and bizarre detail from this period is the emphasis on listening to approved German music. The homes were often equipped with radios or record players, and the mothers were encouraged to listen to the works of Wagner, Beethoven, and Bach. The pseudoscientific theory, promoted by some SS doctors, was that the harmony and order of classical German music would have a positive, calming effect on the unborn child, literally embedding German culture into its nervous system before birth. Historians are still unsure how widespread this practice was, or if it was just another of Himmler's strange mystical obsessions. But it perfectly illustrates the totality of the project. They didn't just want to control your genetics, they wanted to curate the sensory environment of your womb. As your due date approaches, you are moved to the home's delivery ward. It is as well equipped as any modern hospital, if not more so. The standards of medical hygiene are impeccable. The pain of childbirth is the one thing the state cannot control, but it can manage the environment around it. You are attended by a team of doctors and nurses who are efficient, skilled, and emotionally distant. The moment of birth is a strange paradox. It is the most intensely personal and primal experience of your life, yet it is happening in the most impersonal and controlled of settings. When you hold your child for the first time, a wave of fierce, protective love washes over you. In that instant, the state, the ideology, the home, it all fades away. There is only you and this tiny, perfect new person. But the system reasserts itself almost immediately. The baby is taken from you to be weighed, measured, and examined. The same clinical scrutiny that was applied to you is now applied to your child. The doctors check for any defects, any deviation from the RN ideal. They note the hair color, the eye color, the shape of the head. The baby is not just a baby, it is the product, and it must be inspected for quality. You are exhausted, lying in the clean, white bed of the recovery room. A nurse brings your baby back to you, swaddled in a blanket embroidered with the Lebensborn. She smiles. "You have done well," she says, as if you have just completed a difficult but important assignment. You have given the for a beautiful, healthy child. Her words are meant as the highest praise, but they land with a chilling thud. The child in your arms, This person you already love with an intensity that frightens you was never truly meant to be yours. You were just the factory, and the production run is now complete. The days following the birth are a blur of exhaustion, recovery, and a strange hollow sense of anticlimax. You are moved from the delivery ward to the nursery wing of the home. Here, you and the other new mothers care for your infants under the watchful eyes of the nursing staff. But even this most natural of processes was co-opted and reshaped by ideology. The traditional rituals of early life are replaced with new, called ceremonies of the state. The most significant of these is the SS named Stengmisfire, the SS naming ceremony. This is the official replacement for a Christian baptism. In Himmler's vision for the new Germany, the church was a rival for the people's loyalty, an institution to be gradually starved of its influence. Its traditions, its rituals, its moral authority all were to be supplanted by the new pagan mysticism of the SS. And this naming ceremony was a direct assault on one of the most fundamental Christian rights. You are told to dress in your best clothes. You wrap your baby in the special white blanket provided by the home, the one with the silver-grey Lebensborn embroidered in the corner. You and the other new mothers gather in the home's main common room, which has been specially prepared for the occasion. The comfortable chairs have been arranged in neat rows. At the front of the room, on a table covered with a white cloth, a portrait of the Führer has been placed. There might be a vase of flowers and, chillingly, an unsheeted SS dagger lying on a velvet cushion. The ceremony is presided over by a high-ranking SS officer, often the commander of the home or a visiting dignitary. He is not a priest or a pastor, he is a soldier, a bureaucrat of the new faith. He stands before you, his black uniform immaculate, his face stern and impassive. The air is thick with a forced solemnity. The officer begins with a speech. He talks about blood and honor, about loyalty to the Führer, and about the sacred duty of parenthood within the new order. He speaks of the child not as a gift from God, but as a link in the endless chain of the German race, a soldier for the future of the Reich. The language is a strange and unsettling mixture of bureaucratic jargon and mystical pronouncements. Then, one by one, you are called to the front. You stand before the officer, holding your baby. He may ask you for the child's chosen name. The names are often strongly encouraged to be from a list of approved Germanic names: Adolf, Heinrich, Horst for boys, Gisela, Helga, Ingrid for girls. Names considered for and or with biblical origins are frowned upon. The officer does not make the sign of the cross. He does not anoint the baby with holy water. Instead, he might lightly touch the baby with the SS dagger, a symbol of its induction into the world of the SS. He then recites a vow, a pledge. He dedicates the child's life to the Führer and the ideology of National Socialism. And he speaks to you, the mother. He reminds you of your solemn duty to raise this child not as a simple individual, but as a devoted member of the Volksgemeinschaft. You are to instill in them the virtues of loyalty, obedience, and sacrifice from their earliest days. It's a deeply unnerving performance. Historians still debate the emotional impact of these ceremonies on the mothers. Were they moved by the sense of occasion and importance, or did they see it for what it was, a piece of hollow, stilted political theatre? The truth, as always, is likely a spectrum of reactions, from fervent belief to silent, terrified compliance. A little known and particularly strange detail is the sponsorship aspect of the ceremony. Often, the child would be assigned an SS godfather, typically the SS officer who presided over the ceremony or another high-ranking official. This was not a godfather in the traditional sense, who would provide spiritual guidance. This was an ideological guardian. The SS godfather was a symbol of the state's claim on the child. He might provide a small gift, a silver cup engraved with the baby's name and the SS runes, and a certificate confirming the ceremony. It was another way of severing the child's ties to its biological family, unbinding it to the SS fraternity. As you return to your seat, holding your newly named child, a profound sense of loss might settle over you. Your baby has been christened not into a community of faith, but into a political ideology. Its spiritual future has been pledged to a man in a black uniform. The dagger, the runes, the portrait of the Führer, these are its new holy symbols. You look down at the innocent face of your sleeping infant. You have given it a name. But in this ceremony you have also surrendered it. You have formally handed over its soul to the state. The weight of that transaction is heavier than you could ever have imagined. In the weeks following the naming ceremony, the nursery wing of the home becomes a strange, self-contained world. It is a world of timetables, feeding schedules, and meticulous record-keeping. The goal is no longer just the birth of a child, but the cultivation of a perfect infant, a flawless specimen of the Aryan race. The clinical scrutiny that defined your pregnancy now transfers to your baby. Every aspect of your child's early development is measured, monitored, and documented. The nurses, efficient and ever-present, weigh the babies daily. They record every ounce gained, every inch grown. They maintain detailed charts that track feeding habits, sleep patterns, and developmental milestones. Is the child lifting its head on schedule? Is it responding to stimuli in the prescribed manner? This is not just loving care, it is quality control, and their performance is being evaluated. The obsession with physical perfection is paramount. A healthy, robust baby is a sign of a successful program. A chubby baby with rosy cheeks and fair hair is a living, breathing piece of propaganda. These children are the poster babies for the new Germany. Photographers occasionally visit the homes to take pictures from magazines and newsreels. Images of smiling nurses holding up perfect infants, a testament to the health and vitality of the Reich. You and the other mothers are merely the backdrop for these photos, the proud but secondary figures in the story of the state's success. But what happens if a child is not perfect? This is the dark, unspoken undercurrent in the seemingly cheerful nursery. What happens if a baby is born with a physical defect, a cleft palate, a clubfoot, a heart murmur? What happens if a child is slow to develop or suffers from a persistent illness in a system built on the worship of physical perfection? Imperfection cannot be tolerated. It is a flaw in the product, a stain on the ideology. Initially, a child with a minor, correctable issue might receive the best medical care. The program had a vested interest in fixing small flaws, but for children with more significant disabilities or congenital diseases, the future was grim. These unfortunate outcomes were seen as a failure of the racial screening process, an embarrassment to the program. Here, the historical record becomes murky and terrifying. Officially, these children were transferred to specialized clinics for care. But specialized clinic was often a euphemism. Many of these facilities were centers for the Nazis' child euthanasia program, known as Action T4. It was a secret program for the systematic murder of disabled children and adults, people deemed unworthy of life. A child born in the hallowed halls of a Lebensborn home, if found to be defective, could be quietly moved from the cradle of the master race to a deathbed, all under the guise of medical care. The exact number of Lebensborn children who met this fate is unknown. The records were deliberately destroyed, and the line between legitimate medical transfer and euthanasia was intentionally blurred. This remains one of the most horrifying undebated questions for historians studying the program. How systematically were imperfect Lebensborn babies culled? The evidence is fragmented. But the chilling implication is that the same system that celebrated the birth of a perfect child had a mechanism for the disposal of a flawed one. You see the anxiety in the eyes of the other mothers. You feel it in yourself. You watch your own child with a hawk's eye, searching for any sign of weakness, any imperfection that might draw the unwanted attention of the doctors. A baby's cough in the night is not just a cough, it's a source of terror. The love you feel for your child is mingled with a constant, gnawing fear that they might not pass the test, that they might be found wanting by the system that created them. A particularly strange and little-known practice was the follow-up genetic reporting. Mothers were sometimes encouraged to report back on their child's development, even years after leaving the home, providing updates on things like school performance, athletic ability, and health. The SS was attempting to build a long-term genetic database, tracking the success of their breeding pairs over generations. It was a project of monstrous, multinational ambition. You hold your baby close in the quiet of the night. You study every tiny finger, every perfect eyelash. You pray that they are healthy, not just for their own sake, but because their health is their passport in this world. In the serene, white-walled nursery of the Fount of Life, surrounded by the quiet breathing of sleeping infants, The brutal logic of the farm is ever present. The prize stock is nurtured. The runts are discarded. And you, the mother, are powerless to intervene. Your only job is to produce a winner. The nursery, with its rows of identical cribs and its atmosphere of clinical observation, is a lonely place. You are surrounded by women going through the exact same extraordinary experience, and yet a true sense of community is impossible. The very nature of the home breeds suspicion and silence. Everyone has a secret. Everyone has a past they daren't speak of. The camaraderie that might naturally form among new mothers is stifled by the ever-present ideology and the fear of saying the wrong thing. But human connection is a stubborn weed. It finds a way to grow in the most inhospitable soil. It happens in stolen moments, in quiet corners, away from the watchful ears of the nurses. It happens in the laundry room, while you are folding an endless pile of nappies, or later at night, in the hallway, when you are both up with a colicky baby. It happens in a shared glance, a fleeting look of understanding that says, "I see you. I know this is strange and terrifying." You start to form a cautious friendship with another woman. Her name is Anja. She is a few years older than you, with a quiet, sad intelligence in her eyes. Unlike some of the other women, who seem to have fully embraced the role of proud Aryan mother, Anja has a reserve, a stillness, that you recognize in yourself. Your conversations start with safe, neutral topics: the babies, sleeping habits, the blandness of the stewed apples at dinner. But slowly, tentatively, you begin to push the boundaries. One evening, while sitting on a bench in the garden as the sun sets, you both watch an Urs cooing over a particularly cherubic, blue-eyed baby boy. "He's the prize of the litter," Anja says, her voice so low it's almost a whisper. The use of the word litter is deliberate, a small act of rebellion. You just nod, but your heart beats a little faster. It's the first time someone has voiced the ugly truth that you both know. You are not in a maternity ward, you are in a high-class kennel. From that moment on, a silent pact exists between you. You become each other's confidant, a safe harbor in a sea of uncertainty. You learn her story in fragmented pieces. She was a university student in love with a professor who was married. When she became pregnant, he was terrified. He wanted nothing to do with it. Lebensborn was presented to her as the only honorable solution. She speaks of her former life, of books and ideas and debates, with a deep, aching nostalgia. It is a world away from this place of biological determinism. Through these whispered conversations, you begin to see the complex tapestry of life. There's Greta, a fervent true believer. She's the daughter of a local party official and genuinely sees it as her life's greatest honor to produce children for the Führer. She recites propaganda slogans as if they were gospel and looks upon women like you and Anja with a mixture of pity and contempt for your lack of enthusiasm. A simple farm girl who seems bewildered by the whole experience. She is here because her father, a practical man, saw it as a good opportunity, one less mouth to feed at home, and his daughter cared for by the state. She misses her cows more than her family. She confides in you once, a statement so absurd and so honest it almost makes you laugh. Historians often struggle to paint a monolithic picture of the Lebensborn women, and for good reason. They were not a single entity. They were individuals from all walks of life, with a vast range of motivations, beliefs, and levels of complicity. For every ideologically committed fanatic, there was a desperate woman with no other options, and for every pragmatic opportunist, there was a naive girl swept up in patriotic fervor. The home is a microcosm of the wider society, a collection of individuals navigating a corrosive system in their own way. One little-known aspect of the homes was the internal hierarchy that often developed. The wives of high-ranking SS officers were unofficially treated with more deference by the staff. The mothers of particularly perfect-looking babies, the blondest, most blue-eyed ones, were praised and held up as examples. A subtle competition was fostered among the women, a contest for who could best fulfill the Aryan ideal. This internal rivalry was a powerful tool of control, preventing the women from forming a united front and keeping them focused on individual compliance. You and Anja navigate this treacherous social landscape together. You teach each other how to perform the role required of you, You learn to smile blandly during the ideology lectures, to praise the Führer in a convincing tone, to ask the nurses sensible questions about formula and sleep schedules. You create a facade of conformity to protect the small, secret space where you can still be yourself. One night, Anja whispers a terrifying question. What will you do afterwards? The word hangs in the air. The program doesn't just end at birth. Once your child is weaned, usually around 6 to 8 weeks, a decision must be made. You can take the child with you, if you can prove you have a suitable home and the means to support it. Or you can leave the child in the care of the SS. It will be raised in a state-run children's home and eventually placed with a loyal, high-ranking Nazi family. The choice is once again presented as yours. But the pressure to give your child to the Reich, to make the ultimate sacrifice, is immense. You don't have an answer for her. You just look at your sleeping baby, its tiny hand curled around your finger. The thought of leaving is unimaginable. But the thought of taking this child, this product of the SS, out into a world that will forever see it as such, is equally terrifying. The whispers in the hallway are not just about the past, they are about a future that seems impossibly fraught, a future that the home, with its rigid certainty, has not prepared you for at all. The year is now 1939th. The idyllic, isolated peace of the home is about to be shattered by the distant drumbeat of war. One September morning, the radio in the common room, usually broadcasting cheerful folk music or a dry lecture, crackles to life with a different kind of announcement. The Führer is speaking. His voice is hard, resolute. He speaks of Polish aggression, of defending German honor. He announces that German troops have crossed the border. The war has begun. A strange, electric silence falls over the home. The nurses' faces are grim but determined. The other mothers look at each other, their eyes wide with a mixture of excitement, pride, and a new, sharp-edged fear. For the true believers like Rita, this is a moment of triumph, the righteous beginning of Germany's quest for Lebensborn, more living space. For you and Anja, it is something else entirely. It is the moment the abstract ideology of this place collides with the brutal reality of the world outside. The war changes everything. The mission of the Lebensborn program, once a long-term eugenics project, now takes on a new and desperate urgency. A war means casualties. It means the loss of young, healthy German men, the very men needed to father the next generation. Suddenly, your work in the home feels less like a mystical duty and more like a grim necessity. You are no longer just creating a future master race, you are replacing the dead. The rhetoric in the lectures intensifies. The speakers no longer talk of a glorious, peaceful future. They talk of sacrifice, of the battle for racial survival. They read letters from the front, from soldiers who say they are fighting for the future of their children, for the pure German bloodline. The connection is made explicit. The men fight and die at the front, and you fight by giving birth on the home front, and you fight by giving birth on the home front. The pressure to produce children increases dramatically. A new slogan begins to circulate, a chillingly direct quote attributed to Himmler himself: every German woman of good blood should consider it her sacred duty to become a mother, in or out of wedlock, to a soldier departing for the front. The message is clear: have a child for Germany before the men are gone. This is no longer just an invitation, it feels like a mobilization order. The Fount of Life is now a crucial part of the war machine. The war also brings practical changes to the home. While your supplies remain far better than those available to the general population, you begin to see the first signs of rationing. The meals are a little less lavish. The nurses seem more stressed, their professional calm occasionally cracking to reveal a deep weariness. News from the outside world, once carefully filtered, now rickles in through letters and the hushed, worried conversations of the staff. You hear of bombing raids on distant city, of casualty lists posted in town squares. The golden cage no longer feels so separate from the world. You can feel the vibrations of the conflict through its gilded bars. A fascinating and often overlooked consequence of the war was the changing demographic of the fathers. Before 1939, the fathers of Lebensborn children were predominantly from the ranks of the SS, the ideological elite. But as the war expanded, the net was cast wider. Any soldier deemed racially valuable regardless of his rank or branch of service was now a potential fodder for the Reich. The need for numbers began to override the strict insistence on ideological purity. The stud farm was scaling up its operations for wartime production. Historians still debate whether this was a pragmatic dilution of the original vision or simply a logical expansion of it. You see new faces arriving at the home, younger girls, some barely out of their teens. They are the first wave of what will become known as Kriegskind, war children. They are pregnant by soldiers they may have known for only a few days, men who are now hundreds of miles away, fighting in Poland or France. Their eyes hold a different kind of bewilderment, a more acute sense of loss and uncertainty. They are not just unmarried mothers, they are potential widows. The race between the womb and the war creates a feverish, almost hysterical atmosphere. The pregnancies feel like a countdown, a desperate attempt to create life before more death can occur. You look at your own child, safe in its crib, and you feel a new kind of terror. This child was conceived in peacetime, a product of a confident, ascendant ideology, but it will grow up in a world at war. The glorious future it was meant to inherit is now clouded by the smoke of battle. One afternoon you see a staff car pull up the long driveway. A woman in the black uniform of the SS Helferinnenkorps, the female auxiliary, steps out. She is here to be briefed by the home's director. Anja whispers to you, they are expanding. They will need more homes, more of us. The war is not just a conflict of armies, it's a conflict of birth rates. And Himmler, the meticulous chicken farmer, is planning to fight it on all fronts. The demand for racially pure babies is about to skyrocket. Your quiet, isolated villa is no longer just a prototype. It is the model for a continent-spanning enterprise. And Au's whispered prediction proves terrifyingly accurate. The initial victories of the German war machine are swift and stunning. Poland, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, one by one, they fall. The Reich, which was once a national project, is now a burgeoning empire. And an empire, in Himmler's view, needs more than just soldiers and administrators. It needs a demographic tidal wave of pure German blood to colonize the conquered lands and solidify the new order. The Lebensborn project, born in the quiet villas of Bavaria, is about to go international. The first major expansion is into Norway. The logic is simple and chilling. In the twisted racial hierarchy of the Nazis, Norwegians, along with other Scandinavian peoples, were considered to be of high racial value. They were seen as fellow Germanics, distant cousins in the great Aryan family. The women, often fair-haired and blue-eyed, fit the physical stereotype perfectly. Norway was viewed as a rich, untapped reservoir of desirable genetic material. So the system you experienced in Germany is exported and established in the occupied territory. The first Norwegian Lebensborn home, named Heinrich, opens in 1941. Soon, nearly a dozen more follow, set up in confiscated hotels, schools, and private estates. The propaganda machine goes into overdrive. German soldiers stationed in Norway are actively encouraged to form relationships with local women. The policy is so explicit it earns a nickname to Deskind, by date and death candidates for the German soldiers, who are told it is their duty to father a child before potentially dying in battle, and Deutsch Mädchen German girls for the Norwegian women who become involved with them. You hear about this expansion through the official channels in your own home. The newsletters and lectures are filled with proud announcements of the new sister homes in the north. It is presented as a great success, a testament to the brotherhood of the Germanic peoples. But you, listening with Anja, hear the unspoken truth. This is not brotherhood, this is conquest, not just of land, but of warmth. The situation for the Norwegian women is even more fraught with peril than it was for you. You were in your own country participating in a state's action program, however twisted. They are consorting with an occupying army. To their own people, they are collaborators, traitors. The term Tiskiajente German girl is not a compliment, it is a slur strat with contempt. These women face complete social ostracization, threats, and violence from their own communities. For them, a Lebensborn home is not just a choice, it is often the only safe place to go, a sanctuary from the hatred on their own streets. A lesser known, but equally disturbing, part of this expansion was its extension into other countries like Belgium and France. While the populations there were generally considered less racially pure than the Norwegians, individual women who fit the Aryan phenotype, blonde hair, blue eyes, no Jewish ancestry, were also deemed valuable. If a German soldier fathered a child with a French or Belgian woman who met these criteria, she too could be offered passage to a Lebensborn home, either in her own country or in many cases in Germany itself. The system becomes a vast, continental network for harvesting desirable genes. It is a chillingly bureaucratic process. A soldier in France reports his liaison with a local woman. A racial examiner is dispatched to discreetly assess her. If she passes the test, an offer is made. The woman is faced with an impossible choice, stay unfaced with an impossible choice, stay and hardship of raising the child of an enemy soldier, or accept the protection of the occupiers and be spirited away to an unknown fate in the heart of the Reich. Historians still grapple with the motivations of these foreign women. Was it love for the German soldier? Was it a pragmatic decision for survival? Was it a genuine belief in the new Europe promised by the Nazis? The answer, of course, is all of the above. The human stories behind the cold policy are a tangled mess of love, coercion, ideology, and desperation. You try to imagine it. A young Norwegian or French woman, pregnant and alone, arriving at a home just like yours. She doesn't speak the language. She is surrounded by the symbols of the army that occupies her homeland. She is utterly dependent on the very system that has made her an outcast. The isolation you felt upon your arrival would be magnified 100-fold for her. The war has transformed Himmler's pet project from a national eugenics program into an imperial breeding strategy. He is no longer just a chicken farmer for Germany, he is now managing the genetic stock of an entire continent. The goal is to Germanize the empire from within, to create a new generation of children who are biologically and ideologically bound to the Reich, regardless of their mother's nationality. The Fount of Life, which once sprang from German soil, is now being systematically diverted to tap into the human resources of the conquered lands. And the quiet, idyllic homes are now the processing centers for this vast silent biological invasion. The expansion of the Lebensborn program into occupied territories was just the first step. As the war grinds on, especially after the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, the insatiable demand for good blood leads the program down an even darker path. The strategy shifts from encouraging procreation to outright theft. The nurseries of the Reich will no longer wait for births, they will be filled and stolen from their families. This is the beginning of the HEU Aktien, a German codename that chillingly translates to Hey Action. The logic behind this new phase is as twisted as everything that came before it. As German armies push deep into Eastern Europe, into Poland, Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, and Russia, they encounter millions of people deemed by Nazi ideology to be undimensional or subhumans. The plan for these Slavic populations is enslavement, or Devenzi's inferior populations. The Nazi race theorists observed a frustrating anomaly: children who looked German. They saw children with blonde hair, blue or green eyes, and fair skin, the very physical traits they prized. According to their bizarre racial science, these children could not possibly be true Slavs. They must be the descendants of German settlers who had migrated east centuries ago. Their valuable German blood was trapped in racially alien bodies, wasted on an inferior culture. The conclusion was obvious and horrifying: these children had to be rescued. They had to be brought back to the Reich and Germanized. So the SS, along with other Nazi organizations, began a systematic campaign of kidnapping. Special SS units would sweep through villages and towns in the occupied East. They would go into schools, orphanages, and even private homes, looking for children who fit the Aryan phenotype. The process was brutal and terrifying. A child playing in a village square could be snatched away from their parents in an instant. A doctor conducting a medical inspection at a school would single out the blonde-haired children and order them separated from the rest. The children, usually between the ages of 2 and 10, were taken from their families with no explanation. Their parents' desperate pleas and protests were met with violence. You can imagine the scene: a mother screaming, clinging to her child, being beaten back with a rifle butt. A small, bewildered child, crying in a language the soldiers don't understand, being loaded onto a truck with other terrified children, driven away from everything they have ever known. They were not told where they were going or why. They were, in effect, being harvested. These children were then transported to transition camps, often run by the SS. Here they underwent the same cruel, pseudo-scientific racial examination that you once faced. They were stripped, measured, unphotographed. Their hair and eye color were charted. Their parentage was investigated, which usually meant inventing a German ancestry for them. This process was designed to give a veneer of legitimacy to the act of kidnapping. The state wasn't stealing children, it was reclaiming German blood. A particularly cruel and little-known part of this process was the use of a document called the Kindereausweis or Child's Identity Card. Once a child was selected, their old identity was erased. They were given a new German name and a new birth certificate, often listing their birthplace as somewhere in Germany. Their real parents' names were replaced with fake German ones. The state was systematically kidnapping not just their bodies, but their entire histories. The children who passed the racial screening were then sent west into the Reich, and many of them ended up in the very last place you would expect, the pristine, quiet halls of a Lebensborn home. The same nurseries that were cradling the newborn infants of SS officers were now being filled with traumatized, grief-stricken children from the East. The Fount of Life was now a processing center for stolen goods. Historians are still trying to piece together the full scale of this horrific operation. It is estimated that hundreds of thousands of children were kidnapped from across Eastern Europe. The fate of many remains unknown, but a significant number were funneled into the Lebensborn system destined to be adopted by loyal Nazi families. The program's mission had morphed once again. It was no longer just about breeding a new generation. It was now about actively erasing another, stealing its most valuable members and absorbing them into the Reich, like a vampire draining the life from its victims. The silent, biological invasion had become an open campaign of abduction. One day, a new transport arrives at your home. But this time it's not a car delivering a single, nervous pregnant woman. It's a bus. And out of it steps not a new mother-to-be, but a group of children. They are small, ranging in age from perhaps 4 to 8. They are dressed in ill-fitting, unfamiliar clothes, and they cling to each other, their eyes wide with a terror so profound it seems to have silenced them. They do not cry or scream. They are rigid with shock. These are the stolen children, the harvest of the HEU Actium. They are the living, breathing embodiment of the war's darkest turn. Their arrival shatters the carefully constructed tranquility of the home, the pristine environment, designed for the serene cultivation of perfect infants, is now confronted with the raw, messy reality of trauma. You and the other mothers are instructed to help care for them. The nurses, trained to handle newborns and manage pregnancies, are suddenly faced with children who are not blank slates. These children have memories. They have families they have been ripped away from. They have a language that is not German. You see the immediate, jarring contrast between the two groups of children in the home. On one side of the nursery are the Lebensborn infants. They are plump, placid, and healthy, swaddled in their clean white blankets. They are the carefully cultivated products, born into this sterile world. On the other side are the newcomers. They are thin, their faces are smudged with dirt from their long journey, and their eyes hold a haunted, 1,000-yard stare. They are the yard stare. The first task is to strip them of their old identities completely. Their foreign-sounding names are replaced with good German ones. A little girl named Enie becomes Anna. A boy named Lech becomes Ludwig. They are told their old names are wrong, that they must forget them. Their clothes are taken away and burned. They are scrubbed clean in harsh baths and dressed in the same simple, uniform-like clothing worn by other German children in state care. The most brutal part of the process is the language. The children are forbidden from speaking their native tongue, Polish, Czech, Ukrainian. If they are caught whispering to each other in the language of their parents, the punishment might be the denial of a meal, a sharp slap, or most terrifyingly, solitary confinement in a small, dark room. The goal is to beat the foreigners out of them, to force them to speak, think, and dream in German. You see them struggle, their faces contorted with the effort of trying to form the unfamiliar words, the fear of punishment hanging over every syllable. You try to help. You are assigned to a little girl with pale blonde hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. Her new name is Karin, but sometimes in a hushed, desperate whisper she tells you her real name. You pretend not to hear. You can't acknowledge it. To do so would be to conspire with her against the system, a risk you cannot take. You try to be kind to her. You bring her an extra piece of bread. You smile at her. But your kindness is a part of the machine. You are helping to pacify her, to make her compliant, to aid in her rage harmonization. The realization makes you feel sick. A deeply disturbing and well-documented aspect of this process was the psychological manipulation. The children were told that their parents had abandoned them, that they didn't want them anymore. They were told that they were lucky to have been rescued and brought to Germany, where they would have a better life. It was a calculated campaign to break their emotional bonds with their past and foster a sense of gratitude and dependence on their captors. Some of the younger children, their memories still malleable, eventually began to believe it. They forgot their parents' faces, their native language faded, and they began to identify as German. But the older ones remembered. You see it in their eyes. They play silently in the manicured gardens, but their play is joyous. They go through the motions of the structured day, but their spirits are broken. At night, you hear them crying. Not the loud, demanding cry of an infant, but a quiet, hopeless, muffled sobbing that tears at your heart. It is the sound of a grief too profound for a child to bear. The presence of these children creates a new, unspoken tension among the mothers. For the true believers like Greta, it is a noble cause. They see the stolen children as lost German souls being brought back into the fold, and they participate in their re-education with zealous fervor. But for you and Domja, it is a daily confrontation with the true face of the ideology you are serving. You can no longer pretend this is about creating life. You are now participating in the destruction of it, the destruction of families, of identities, of childhoods. You look at your own baby, sleeping peacefully in its crib, and then you look at Karin, huddled in the corner of the playroom. Both are blue eyes. By the twisted logic of the Reich, they are the same, both racially valuable. But one is a cherished product, and the other is a stolen good. The Fount of Life has become a repository for the Reich's contraband, and its waters are now hopelessly, irrevocably poisoned. In this carefully curated world obsessed with racial purity and physical perfection, the concept of unhunger unsupertibly, or being unqualified is a constant, looming threat. It hangs over the pregnant mothers, the newborn infants, and now most starkly, over the stolen children from the East. The system is designed not just to select the best, but also to ruthlessly discard the rest. The price of failing to meet the standard is terrifyingly high. For a pregnant woman like you, being deemed unsuitable could have happened at the very first step. A flaw in your genealogy, a hereditary illness in your family, or even physical features that didn't quite match the Aryan ideal could have led to your rejection. But what about those already inside the system? The stolen children, in particular, face a second, even more terrifying round of scrutiny. After arriving at the home, these children are not just re-educated, they are under constant observation. Their Germanization is a probationary period. Doctors and so-called racial psychologists monitor their progress. Do they learn German quickly? Do they adopt German customs? Do they respond well to authority? Are they displaying the desired traits of obedience and resilience? Their very personality is being graded. But the most critical test is often their behavior. A child who resists learning German, who constantly cries for their parents, or who acts out in anger and grief is a problem. This isn't seen as a natural response to trauma, it's seen as evidence of their un-German, Slavic nature reasserting itself. They are deemed psychologically unsuitable for Germanization. They have failed the test. Similarly, if a child, upon closer medical examination within the home, is found to have a hidden health problem or a minor physical imperfection that was missed in the initial screening, they are also categorized as unsuitable. They are no longer considered valuable. So what is the fate of these unqualified children? This is where the Lebensborn system intersects with the most brutal machinery of the Nazi state. They are not simply sent back to their families. That would be an admission of error. And the system never admits error. Instead, They are quietly removed from the home. Their files are stamped with the chillingly bureaucratic term Rückführung, which means repatriation or return transfer. It sounds harmless. It is anything but. These children are not returned to their original homes. They are sent back east, but not to their families. They are sent to concentration camps. Some are sent to camps designed for forced labor, even at a young age. Others, particularly those deemed medically unfit, are sent to camps with extermination facilities like Auschwitz or Magenduck. A child who just weeks before was being measured for their Orion potential in a Lebensborn home could find themselves on a transport to a gas chamber. The historical evidence for this, though systematically suppressed and destroyed by the Nazis, is undeniable. Survivor testimonies and fragmented records paint a horrifying picture. A child's fate could turn on the subjective whim of an SS doctor or the report of a frustrated nurse. A bout of bedwetting, a persistent refusal to eat, a defiant crying polish, any of these could be a death sentence. A specific, horrifying detail that has emerged from historical research is the concept of the educational test. Some children were subjected to cruel psychological tests designed to provoke a reaction. A psychologist might show a child a picture of their home village or mention their parents' names to see if it elicited a strong emotional response. A child who broke down and cried was deemed to have unbreakable ties to their past and was therefore unsuitable for Germanization. Their love for their family was used as evidence against them. Inside your Lebensborn home, this process is invisible but palpable. One day, a child is simply gone. A boy who struggled with German, who threw his bowl of soup on the floor in a fit of rage and grief, is no longer in his bed in the morning. The nurses offer no explanation. The other children are silent, their eyes filled with a new, more specific fear. They understand with the brutal clarity of childhood that compliance is survival. You look at the little girl Karin who you have been caring for. You see the constant battle within her, the flicker of memory and rebellion versus the overwhelming need to survive. You find yourself silently urging her to conform, to forget her past, to be the good German girl they want her to be. Your kindness has become a tool of coercion, a way of helping her pass the test so she doesn't disappear. You are complicit in the erasure of her soul to save her life. The Fount of Life has a dark, hidden drain. It is a system that not only produces life but also decides on a whim who is worthy of it. The same ideology that cherishes a perfect baby in one room signs the death warrant for a flawed one in the next. The line between the nursery and the abyss is terrifyingly thin, and it is drawn by the same hand. While you and the other mothers are trapped on one side of the system, there is another group of women who are its gears and ladders, the nurses. They are a constant, ubiquitous presence in the home. Dressed in their immaculate white uniforms, they are the faces of the Lebensborn program, the agents of its daily operation. They are the ones who weigh your baby, who administer your medicine, who lead the ideology sessions, and who hush the crying of the stolen children. And to this day, it remains one of the most morally ambiguous aspects of the entire story. You watch them as they go about their duties with a brisk, professional efficiency. Many are young, not much older than you. They are often recruited from the Bund Deutsche Madel League of German Girls, or the NS Women's League. They are chosen for their loyalty to the party, their physical fitness, and their belief in the National Socialist vision of womanhood. To them, being a nurse in a Lebensborn home is not just a job, it is a high calling, a patriotic service on par with being a soldier. Their training is a mixture of standard nursing practice and intense ideological indoctrination. They are taught the principles of modern hygiene and infant care, but they are also schooled in racial theory. They learn to identify Aryan features, to understand the importance of good blood, and to see their work as a crucial contribution to the Reich's future. They are the gatekeepers of the new generation's health, both physical and ideological. You observe the different types among them. There is Sister Hild, the one who greeted you on your first day. She is older, a true believer from the early days of the movement. She speaks of the Führer with a quiet, fervent reverence, and she genuinely seems to see the home as a holy sanctuary. She is kind in a detached, clinical way, but her eyes are hard when she looks at a child who is difficult or a mother who seems ungrateful. She is the embodiment of the system's cold, maternal authority. Then there are the younger nurses, some of whom seem to be simply doing a job. They are less overtly ideological, more focused on the practical tasks of changing nappies and preparing bottles. They might occasionally offer a genuine, human smile or a moment of warmth. But they are still part of the machine. They still enforce the rules. They still enforce the rules. They still enforce the rules. They still report infractions. They still participate in the separation of children from their past. The question that historians, and you yourself, constantly grapple with is, what did they really know, and what did they allow themselves to believe? Did they understand the full, sinister scope of the program? Did they know that the special clinics where unsuitable children were sent were often places of death? Did they comprehend that they were active participants in a state-sponsored kidnapping ring? The answer is almost certainly a spectrum of awareness and denial. Some, like Sister Hild, were likely high-level participants who footed the program's darkest aims. They were ideologues with medical training, but many others probably existed in a state of carefully cultivated ignorance. They focused on their immediate duties, caring for babies, keeping the wards clean, and chose not to ask questions about the larger picture. They saw themselves as caregivers, healers, protectors of life. To confront the reality that they were also complicit in its destruction would have been psychologically unbearable. A fascinating, little-known detail is the existence of personal diaries and letters from some of these nurses. After the war, a few of these documents were recovered. In one entry, a nurse might write lovingly about the beautiful blue eyes of a new baby in her care. In the next, she might complain matter-of-factly about a stubborn Polish child who refuses to stop speaking his gibberish language. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. They manage to separate their human feelings for the valuable children from their cold, ideological dismissal of the unworthy ones. They built walls in their minds to make their work possible. You see this firsthand. You see a nurse gently stroking the head of your sleeping baby. And then, an hour later, you see the same nurse yanking the arm of a stolen child who has wet the bed, her face a mask of cold fury. Are they monsters, or are they ordinary people who have become cogs in a monstrous machine? The line is terrifyingly blurry. They are the good Germans who made the system function. Without their efficiency, their dedication, and their willful blindness, the entire enterprise would have collapsed. You and the other mothers have a complicated relationship with them. They are your caretakers and your jailers. You depend on them for everything, but you also fear them. You learn to read their moods, to know which ones might be sympathetic to a small request and which ones will report the slightest infraction. They hold immense power over your daily life and, more terrifyingly, over the fate of your child. As you watch Sister Hild making her evening rounds, her footsteps silent on the polished floor, you see her not just as a nurse, but as a priestess of this strange, new religion. She is tending to the sacred flame of pure blood, nurturing the chosen ones and quietly sweeping the ashes of the rejected out the back door. She is a mother to none but a guardian of the ideology that owns you all. The year is 1944. The tide of the war has turned. The swift, stunning victories of the early years are a distant memory. On the Eastern Front, the once invincible German army is in a bloody, desperate retreat. In the West, the Allies have landed in Normandy. The war, which was once something that happened far away, is now coming home. The Reich, which was supposed to last 1,000 years, is beginning to crumble. Inside the golden cage of the Lebensborn home, the foundations are starting to shake. The gilded exterior, so carefully maintained for years, is beginning to show cracks. The changes are subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. The most obvious change is the food. The lavish, high-quality meals that were once a symbol of your privileged status are a thing of the past. The supply lines of the Reich are strained to the breaking point, and not even Himmler's pet project is immune. The fresh fruit and abundant meat are replaced by watery soups, coarse bread, and an endless supply of potatoes and cabbage. The nurses still talk about nutritionally balanced meals, but the words ring hollow. You can feel the hunger, a dull, constant ache that gnaws at you and makes the babies more fretful. Fear, once a subtle undercurrent, now becomes a palpable presence in the home. The professional calm of the staff begins to fray. The nurses are jumpy, their conversations hushed and anxious. They listen to the radio with a new, desperate intensity, their faces falling with each report of another city lost, another front collapsing. The drone of Allied bombers, once a distant rumor, is now a sound you sometimes hear in the dead of night, a low, menacing hum that makes the windows rattle. The war is no longer an abstract concept and an ideology lecture, it is a vibration in the air. The population of the home changes too. There are fewer new arrivals. The vast, bureaucratic machine that once processed women like you is breaking down. Instead, the home becomes a refuge for the wives and children of high-ranking SS officials fleeing from the advancing Allied armies. These new residents are different. They are not young, naive girls fulfilling their duty. They are panicked, arrogant women, accustomed to privilege, who now find themselves on the losing side. They bring with them an atmosphere of entitlement and terror, their presence a constant reminder that the world outside is falling apart. One of the most telling signs of the decay is the breakdown of the re-Germanization program for the stolen children. The resources and personnel needed for that intensive, cruel process are no longer available. The remaining stolen children are largely left to their own devices, a ghost population haunting the hallways of the home. No one has the time or energy to beat their native language out of them anymore. You start to hear whispers of portion check in the playroom again, a small, defiant sign of the system's collapse. Historians often point to this period as the moment the true, fragile nature of the Lebensborn project was exposed. Built on an ideology of strength and permanence, it could not withstand the reality of defeat. Its promises of a glorious future and a privileged life evaporated in the face of food shortages and advancing enemy tanks. The Fount of Life was drying up. A little-known and desperate measure taken during this time was the attempt to evacuate some of the homes. As the fronts closed in, the SS tried to move the mothers and children from homes in the east and in occupied territories to safer locations deeper within Germany. These evacuations were often chaotic and terrifying journeys on crowded trains, under the constant threat of air raids. A journey that began with a peaceful, solitary ride to a country villa now ended in a panicked flight from the enemy. You and Donja talk in whispers at night, the fear a cold knot in your stomachs. What will happen to us, she asks, the question you are both terrified to voice. What will happen to the children, the world you were brought into? A world of rigid order and absolute certainty is dissolving into chaos, and you are completely unprepared for it. You have been sheltered, controlled, and de-skilled. You don't know how to navigate a world that is not run by the bell. One evening, Sister Hild gathers everyone in the common room. Her face is pale and drawn, her usual stern composure gone. She announces that the home is to be prepared for imminent transfer. She doesn't use the word evacuation. She doesn't use the word defeat. But everyone understands what she means. The end is near. That night, you see a strange orange glow on the horizon, and you see the nurses, led by Sister Hild, carrying boxes out of the director's office and burning them in a large bonfire in the garden. They are destroying the records. The thick files with your measurements, your genealogies, your children's birth certificates, all of it is being turned to ash. The years of meticulous, obsessive record-keeping are going up in smoke. They are erasing the evidence. They are trying to make it so the Fount of Life, with all its secrets and all its crimes, never existed at all. The beautiful, solid facade of the home has cracked, and through the fissures you can see the panic of a failed utopia trying to disappear into the night. The end does not come with a grand battle or a heroic last stand. It comes with chaos and confusion. One morning, you wake up not to the sound of the bell, but to the sound of shouting in the hallways. The rigid clockwork routine of the home has shattered overnight. The senior staff, including Sister Hilden, the resident doctor, are gone. They disappeared in the night, taking with them whatever they could carry, leaving the junior nurses and the residents to fend for themselves. The shepherds have abandoned their flock. Panic spreads through the home like a contagion. The remaining nurses, young and terrified, have no orders, no instructions. Some of them simply pack their own small bags and walk away, melting into the stream of refugees clogging the nearby roads. Others stay, not out of loyalty, but out of a paralyzing fear of the unknown. They wander the halls, their white uniforms now looking like ghost costumes, their authority completely gone. The mothers react in different ways. The arrogant wives of the officials are hysterical, demanding to know where their husbands are, why no one is coming to save them. The true believers like Greta are in a state of catatonic shock, unable to process the reality where the Führer has failed and the Reich has fallen. For them, the collapse of the state is a personal, spiritual annihilation. You and Onja, however, feel a different emotions stirring beneath the fierce range, terrifying flicker of freedom. For the first time in years, for some, no one is watching you. No one is telling you what to do, what to eat, what to think. The bell is silent. The cage door has swung open, but the world outside is a terrifying, burning landscape. You grab your child. That is the only instinct that matters now. You find Onja, who was holding her own son, her face a mixture of terror and resolve. You have to get out. But where do you go? The home, which was once your prison, was also your shelter. Now, there is nowhere to hide. Together, you and the few other women who are still capable of rational thought raid the home's larder. You stuff your pockets with stale bread and dried sausages. You grab blankets from the beds. You are no longer mothers of the Reich, you are refugees, scavengers, survivors. As you leave the grand villa for the last time, you pass the playroom. A few of the stolen children are huddled in a corner, their faces blank. No one has told them what is happening. They have been abandoned yet again, this time by their captors. It is a haunting, final image of the system's utter moral bankruptcy. The debate over what happened to these children in the chaotic final days of the war is one of the most tragic and unresolved chapters of the Lebensborn story. Many were simply lost in the chaos, their true identities gone forever. You step out onto the gravel driveway. The manicured park is now overgrown with weeds. The air smells of smoke. In the distance, you can hear the rumble of artillery. You join the endless column of people on the road, disarmed soldiers, civilians fleeing the fighting, former forced laborers. It is a river of defeated humanity, and you are just 2 more drops in the current. Then you see them. The first Allied soldiers. They are Americans, young men in unfamiliar green uniforms, their faces smudged with dirt and exhaustion. They roll past in their jeeps and tanks, looking at the stream of German refugees with a mixture of curiosity, pity, and contempt. The moment of liberation is not one of joy. It is one of profound confusion and shame. When the soldiers look at you, a healthy young woman with a baby and no husband, what do they see? They don't see a victim of a coercive eugenics program. They see a Nazi, a fraternizer, the spoils of war. The very Aryan features that made you valuable to the Reich now make you an object of suspicion and disgust to its conquerors. A little-known fact is how the Allied forces initially handled the discovery of the Lebensborn homes. They were often completely unprepared for what they found. They saw these well-appointed villas, full of healthy women and babies, and didn't understand the sinister ideology behind them. The initial reports often mistook them for brothels for high-ranking Nazis or simple maternity hospitals. The full, chilling truth of the breeding program, the racial screening, and the kidnappings would only emerge later, as investigators began to piece together the evidence. You and Onja try to blend in, to become invisible. You pull your scarves over your fair hair. You try to look as drab and unremarkable as possible. The liberation of your country feels like a personal judgment. You have been freed from your golden cage, only to find yourself in a much larger, more chaotic prison, the prison of a defeated and shamed nation. You have no papers, no home to return to, and a child with a history that you can never, ever explain, but your own personal struggle for survival has just begun. The years after the war are a different kind of struggle, a silent, internal battle fought in the ruins of the old world. The physical hunger of the final months in the home is replaced by a deeper, more persistent hunger for a normal life, a life free from the shadow of your past. But the brand of the Lebensborn program is not easily erased. It is a ghost that follows you, a whisper in every new town, a question in the eyes of every new person you meet. You and Onja manage to stay together for a time, a small, two-person family unit adrift in the chaos of post-war Germany. You find shelter in displaced persons camps. You work odd jobs on farms for a bit of food and a place to sleep in a barn. Your children, the perfect Aryan infants, are now just two more fatherless toddlers in a nation full of them. But they're perfect, blonde-haired, it invites questions. It marks them, and you, as different. You eventually part ways with Omja, your paths diverging as you each try to stitch together a new life from the wreckage. You find work as a seamstress in a small town where no one knows you. You invent a story. A simple, tragic, and believable one. Your husband was a soldier. He died on the Eastern Front. You are a war widow. It is a common enough story, a cloak of normality that you wrap around yourself. You become ruthlessly protective of this new, fabricated identity. But the past is never truly gone. It lives in the questions your child begins to ask as they grow older. Where are the pictures of Papa? What was he like? You give vague, rehearsed answers. You describe a man you have invented, a hero who exists only in your words. The lie is a constant, exhausting effort. The society around you is wrestling with its own demons. The process of denazification is underway. The Allies are trying to purge German society of its Nazi elements. People are desperate to prove they were never true believers, that they were just following orders, or that they knew nothing of the regime's worst crimes. In this environment of collective amnesia and finger-pointing, your secret is a ticking bomb. If anyone were to discover the truth that you voluntarily participated in an elite SS breeding program, you would be branded a pariah, a Nazi whore. The very program that was supposed to bring you honor would now bring you nothing but shame. This societal condemnation is the great, tragic irony faced by the Lebensborn mothers. They were victims of a coercive state, yet in the eyes of the post-war world, they were perpetrators. They were seen as the most intimate collaborators, women who had willingly given their bodies to the architects of the genocide. There was no sympathy, no understanding of the immense pressure and propaganda they had faced. A little-known aspect of this period is the legal limbo that many Lebensborn children found themselves in. The birth certificates created in the homes, with their fake fathers' names or simply listed as the guardian, were often not recognized by the new West German authorities. This made it difficult to get ration cards, enroll in school, or establish legal identity. The children born to be the new elite were now a bureaucratic nightmare, their very existence a challenge to the new, fragile legal order. You live in constant fear of exposure. A forgotten document, a slip of the tongue, someone from the home showing up in your town by chance, any of these could shatter the fragile life you have built. You become secretive, withdrawn. You avoid close friendships. You keep your past locked away in a dull corner of your mind. But sometimes it ambushes you. You'll see a flash of blonde hair on a child in the street that reminds you of one of the stolen children, and you'll be hit with a wave of guilt so profound it almost makes you sick. You'll hear a piece of Wagnerian music on the radio and be transported back to the sun-drenched common room, and the feeling of being watched or being an instrument will return with chilling clarity. The Lebensborn program didn't just take a few months of your life, it took your identity. It replaced it with a role, and when the play was over you were left with nothing. You are not the innocent girl you were before, and you are not the brave war widow you pretend to be. You are a ghost, haunted by a past you cannot speak of, raising a child whose origins must remain a secret forever. The brand of the Fount of Life is invisible, but you can feel it on your skin every single day. While you wrestle with your own ghosts, your child, and thousands like them, embark on a different but equally arduous journey, the search for an identity. They are the children of the Fount of Life, the Lebensborn kind of born to be a master race. They grow up in the ashes of that dream, bearing a legacy they did not choose and cannot understand. Their lives are a testament to the long, painful aftershocks of Himmler's monstrous experiment. For your child, growing up in the post-war years, life is a puzzle with missing pieces. They have your love, but they also have a void where a father should be. The story you tell them of a heroic soldier father who died in the war is a comfort, but it's a thin one. They see other children with grandparents, with uncles and aunts, with a web of family stories that connects them to a past. Your child has only you, a single, isolated thread. They feel a sense of rootlessness, a feeling that they don't quite belong. As they become teenagers, the questions become more pointed, more difficult to deflect. They want details. They want names, dates, places. The simple story is no longer enough. The lie you have maintained for so long begins to feel like a war between you and the person you love most. But the truth is a bomb you dare not detonate. To tell them the truth would be to saddle them with a burden of shame, to reveal that their existence was not the product of love, but of a eugenics program. How do you tell your child they were bred like cattle? This dilemma was faced by thousands of Lebensborn mothers. Many, like you, chose to keep the secret their entire lives, taking it to the grave. They believed they were protecting their children. But secrets have a way of poisoning relationships, creating a distance that can never be bridged. Many Lebensborn children grew up with a profound and inexplicable sense of otherness. Some were eventually told the truth by their mothers, often late in life, leading to a crisis of identity. Others discovered it by accident, by finding a hidden document or through the work of investigators. For these individuals, the revelation was often devastating. Everything they thought they knew about themselves was a lie. Their very origins were tainted by the darkest chapter of their country's history. The fate of the stolen children was even more tragic. Many were adopted by loyal Nazi families who, after the war, raised them as their own, never telling them of their true origins. A Polish child, kidnapped at age 4, could grow up as a German, with no memory of their real family or language. But many were haunted by fragmented memories, the face of a woman they couldn't name, a lullaby in a language they no longer spoke. They felt like strangers in their own lives. Some of these children, now adults, began to search for their roots, a painful and often fruitless quest to find families who had long believed them dead. A little-known but powerful example of this struggle is the story of the Norwegian Lebensborn children. After the war, the roughly 12,000 children fathered by German soldiers faced horrific persecution. They and their mothers were branded as traitors. The children were bullied, abused, and in some documented cases, even confined to mental institutions simply because of their parentage. The Norwegian state itself was complicit in this discrimination. For them, the Fount of Life was a lifelong curse. Many later sued the Norwegian government for its failure to protect them, a legal battle that brought their painful story to international attention. As the years pass, some of the Lebensborn children begin to find each other. They form support groups and organizations, like the Traces of Life Lebensborn e.V. In these groups, for the first time, they can speak openly about their experiences. They share their stories of searching for their fathers, of grappling with their mother's secrets, of feeling like outsiders. They discover that their strange, isolating experiences were not unique. They are part of a hidden community, a scattered family of survivors. You watch your own child navigate the world. You see their successes and their struggles. You see them fall in love, build a career, perhaps of children of their own. You see them build a life that is full and real, a life that has nothing to do with the cold ideological purpose for which they were created. And in that, you find a small, painful measure of peace. But the question always remains in the back of your mind. Should you tell them, would the truth set them free? Or would it destroy the world they have so carefully built? It is a question without an easy answer. The final, agonizing legacy of your time in the home. The children were meant to be nameless cogs in the machine of the Reich, but they grew up to be individuals, each wrestling with the ghosts of a past that was never truly their own. As you and your child navigate the treacherous landscape of memory and identity, the world outside begins its own clumsy attempt to reckon with the past. In 1947, in the bombed-out city of Nuremberg, a series of trials are held by an American military tribunal. These are the subsequent Nuremberg trials, designed to prosecute the lower-level Nazi functionaries who ran the vast machinery of the regime. One of these trials deals directly with the system that defined your life, the Ruis, HA trial. The trial focuses on the leadership of the SS Race Settlement Main Office Ruis HA, the organization that oversaw the entire racial project of the Reich. And on the docket, as a subsidiary charge, is the Lebensborn program. For the first time, the secrets of the homes are meant to be dragged into the light of a courtroom. You follow the news reports with a knot of hope. Perhaps now you think the world will finally understand. The main defendants are the high-ranking SS officials who were Himmler's deputies, the architects of the racial policies. The evidence presented is overwhelming. The prosecution lays out the entire system: the intrusive racial screening, the kidnapping of children from the East, the pressure on women to bear children for the SS. They present documents, testimony from officials, and harrowing accounts from the parents of the stolen children. But then something strange happens. When the trial turns specifically to the Lebensborn organization itself, the focus shifts. The defense lawyers for the Lebensborn officials, the directors and doctors of the homes, present a masterful and deeply cynical argument. They claim that Lebensborn was, at its heart, a simple welfare and maternity organization, a charitable institution. They argue that the homes provided excellent medical care for mothers and infants who would have otherwise been destitute. They portray the program as a progressive social service designed to reduce abortion rates and remove the stigma of unwed motherhood. They meticulously separate the Lebensborn homes from the wider criminal policies of the SS. The kidnapping of children that was the work of other departments, the defense claims. The Lebensborn homes were merely the innocent recipient, providing care for abandoned war orphans. The racial screening, just a sensible public health measure to prevent hereditary diseases. The American judges, struggling to comprehend the sheer scale and strangeness of the Nazi state, are swayed by this argument. They are accustomed to a legal system with clear lines of responsibility. The defense's strategy of burying the criminal intent under a mountain of bureaucratic paperwork and claims of charitable purpose is devastatingly effective. And so the verdict comes down. While the main RUSHA officials are convicted of crimes against humanity for the kidnappings and other racial policies, the leadership of the Lebensborn program itself gets off astonishingly lightly. The court officially declares that Lebensborn was not a criminal organization. The judges rule that the homes were, in essence, welfare institutions. The key defendants directly associated with the homes receive sentences that are shockingly lenient. Some are acquitted entirely. One of the lay administrators sentenced to time already served and walks out of the courtroom a free man. The verdict is a stunning blow. It is a legal whitewash of history. For the world, it creates the enduring and dangerously misleading myth that the Lebensborn homes were little more than glorified maternity wards, perhaps a bit strange, but not inherently criminal. The term brothel, which some sensationalist early reports had used, is dismissed, but the truth that it was a human stud farm and a processing center for stolen children is also obscured. The legal ruling creates a fog that will hang over the history of the program for decades. This verdict is a topic of intense debate among historians to this day. Was it a failure of the prosecution? Was it a reflection of the judge's inability to grasp the nature of a totalitarian, ideological state, or was it, in some small way, influenced by the post-war political climate, where the focus was shifting from punishing Nazis to confronting the new threat of the Soviet Union? There is no single answer. For you, listening to the news on the radio in your small apartment, the verdict is a profound and bitter betrayal. The system that used your body, that tried to claim your child, that was built on a foundation of monstrous ideology, has been officially sanitized. It has been declared charitable. Your experience, your fear, your complicity, and your suffering have been legally erased. The world has not understood. It has chosen not to. You turn off the radio. The silence in the room is heavy. You now know for certain that your story is one you will have to carry alone, a truth that has no place in the official record of history. The years continue to pass, turning the sharp edges of memory into something duller, a chronic ache rather than an acute pain. The charitable verdict of the Nuremberg court allows the story of Lebensborn to fade from public consciousness, relegated to a strange, misunderstood footnote in the history of the Third Reich. For decades, the full truth remains buried, not just by the lies of the perpetrators, but by the bonfire you saw on that frantic night in 1945. The mystery of the burned files becomes the final, formidable barrier to understanding what truly happened. The systematic destruction of records in the final days of the war was an act of calculated self-preservation by the SS. They knew that their meticulous paperwork, once a source of pride, was now a mountain of incriminating evidence. The files containing the mother's racial examinations, the fathers' identities, the birth records of the children, and most damningly the documentation of the kidnapped children from the East. All of it was targeted for destruction. They were attempting to burn a hole in history to create a void where the truth should be. This act of destruction has been a source of immense frustration and challenge for historians ever since. For decades, piecing together the story of Lebensborn has been like assembling a vast, shattered mosaic. The work relies on scraps of evidence, the handful of records that survive by chance, allied intelligence reports from the immediate post-war period, the fond self-serving testimony from the Nuremberg trials, and, most importantly, the voices of the survivors themselves. Researchers have had to become detectives. They have spent countless hours in archives across Europe, searching for a single misplaced document that might shed light on the program. They have cross-referenced captured SS personnel files with local birth registers. They have painstakingly interviewed the Lebensborn kind of the stolen children, and the few mothers and nurses who were willing to break their long silence. Each new testimony, each discovered letter, is a tiny piece of the puzzle, helping to fill in the vast gaps left by the flames. One of the greatest unresolved mysteries is the true number of children who passed through the system. The SS claimed around 8,000 were born in Germany and another 12,000 in Norway. But these numbers are widely disputed and likely do not include the vast number of kidnapped children who were processed through the homes. The real figure is almost certainly much higher, but without the central records, it is a number that historians can only estimate. The exact scale of Himmler's breeding project remains, in some ways, unknowable. Another enduring puzzle fueled by the destroyed files is the identity of the fathers. While it is known that many were SS officers, the anonymity built into the system has made it nearly impossible for most Lebensborn children to ever learn who their biological fathers were. The SS essentially created a generation of ghosts, children with one half of their history deliberately and permanently erased. The pain and uncertainty caused by this single act of bureaucratic secrecy have echoed down through generations. Historians today are still actively debating many facets of the program. Was the primary motivation truly Himmler's mystical eugenics? Or was it a more pragmatic to love, social control and Germanization? How centralized was the decision-making? Versus how much autonomy did individual home directors have, especially regarding the fate of unsuitable children? The bonfire and the garden consumed the simple answers, leaving behind a complex and troubling set of questions that scholars continue to explore. A fascinating, little-known area of modern research involves genetics. In recent years, as DNA testing has become more accessible, some Lebensborn children and their descendants have turned to science to find the answers that history denied them. They have used ancestry websites to find half-siblings they never knew existed or to trace their lineage back to specific regions, sometimes confirming or refuting the Germanic origins invented for them by the SS. Science is now, in some small way, helping to reconstruct the family trees that the Nazis tried to uproot and redraw. You in your old age are a living archive. The memories that you have kept locked away for a lifetime are more complete than any document that survived the fires. You know the smell of the disinfectant in the hallways, the feel of the rough wool of the baby blankets, the sound of the stolen children crying in the night. You are a primary source, but you have remained silent, like so many others, out of fear, shame, and a desperate desire to protect your child. The burned files are not just a historical problem, they are the symbol of a silence that has defined thousands of lives. The truth of Lebensborn lies not just in what was destroyed, but in what has been too painful to speak. The years have settled like dust. You are an old woman now, sitting in a comfortable chair by a window watching a world that has moved on, a world that has mostly forgotten. Your child is grown with a family of their own. Your grandchildren visit, and their laughter fills the small apartment, a sound so ordinary and so precious it sometimes makes your heart ache. You have lived the life you fabricated, the life of the respectable war widow, for so long that it has almost become the truth. But in the quiet moments, when the house is still and the evening light is fading, the past returns. It comes not as a nightmare anymore, but as a series of faded photographs in your mind. You see yourself as a young woman, full of a naive, dangerous hope, standing on a cobblestone street. You see the cold, impersonal room in the home, the sunlight streaming through the window onto a bed that was never truly yours. You see in Jas's sad, intelligent eyes. You see the face of Karen, the little girl from Poland, her eyes too old for her small face. You see the bonfire in the garden, the ashes of your history swirling up into the night sky. You look at your hands, wrinkled and spotted with age. These are the hands that held your newborn baby, the product of that cold, calculated system. These are the hands that tried to comfort a stolen child. These are the hands that packed a small suitcase to flee the crumbling ruins of a mad dream. Your body, which was once a national resource, a vessel for an ideology, is now just an old woman's body, tired and worn, but it remembers. You sometimes wonder about the others. What happened to Anja? Did she find a measure of peace? What became of Greta? The true believer, did her faith survive the collapse of her gods and the nurses? Like Sister Hill, did they ever, in the quiet of their own old age, reckon with what they had done, or did they cling to the lie that they were only ever caregivers? These are questions without answers. The fates of the other women in the golden cage scattered and lost to time. The legacy of Lebensborn is not in the grand sweep of history books. It's in the quiet, unwritten stories of the thousands of lives it touched and twisted. It's in the identity crises of the children, the lifelong secrets of the mothers, and the unmourned grief of the families of the stolen. It was a project that aimed to create a perfect future, but all it produced was a legacy of broken pasts. Historians continue to debate the finer points, arguing over numbers and motivations, trying to bring clarity to the shadows. Was Lebensborn a central pillar of the Nazi state or a bizarre, secondary project driven by one man's obsessions? The consensus remains that it was a uniquely sinister fusion of modern, scientific eugenics and romantic, pseudo-religious ideology, a perfectly Nazi creation. It was the ultimate expression of the state's desire to control life itself. From the bedroom to the cradle to the grave, you pick up a photograph from the side table. It's of your child, smiling, surrounded by their own family. They are whole. You did not tell them. You did not tell them. The secret will die with you. You look at their face, and you see your own eyes looking back, but you also see the ghost of a father they never knew, an anonymous contributor to a monstrous project. In that beloved face, the whole complicated, painful history is reflected. You made a choice, a lifetime ago, to protect them from that history. You still don't know if it was the right one. You look out the window as the sun sets. The world outside is peaceful. But you know that the ideas that built that home, the seductive whispers of purity, of belonging, of a nation's glorious destiny, are never truly gone. They just sleep, waiting for a new voice, a new uniform, a new promise of a perfect future. You close your eyes. You are a mother for the Reich. And you have spent a lifetime trying to become a mother for yourself. The Fount of Life promised you honor and purpose, but all it gave you was a story that you could never tell, and a silence that will last forever. The story is over now. The echoes of the bells and the whispered conversations have faded into the quiet of your room. Let the weight of it all begin to drift away, like smoke thinning in the cool night air. The journey we took was heavy, but you are back now. Safe in your own space, in your own time. Feel the gentle pull of sleep, a soft tide drawing you away from the shores of the past. The figures in our story, the young woman at the window, the nurse in the hallway, the child in the crib, they are receding, becoming part of the vast, silent library of things that were. They can rest now, and so can you. Your mind can let go of the search for answers, the untangling of lies. There is nothing left to do but to breathe, in undoubt, a slow, easy rhythm that matches the soft hum of the fan, the quiet pulse of the sleeping world around you. You are simply here, in your bed, and the night is a deep, calm motion ready to carry you into dreams. Let the darkness be a comfort, a soft blanket wrapping around you, promising peace and a gentle forgetting, at least for a little while. The end of the article. Good night.